Hello, and welcome to the Trusted Voices podcast. I'm Erin Hennessy, alongside Teresa Valerio Parrot, and in each episode, we discuss the latest news and biggest issues facing higher education leaders through a communications lens. For these conversations, we're often joined by a guest who shares their own experiences and perspectives, but we also make time for one-on-one conversations about what we're seeing, hearing, and thinking. Trusted Voices is produced by Volt, the go-to news source for higher ed leaders and decision makers. Remember to visit Volt at voltedu.com and subscribe to Trusted Voices on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. Hey.
Hi, I have some great news.
I'm taking next week off?
Maybe, I don't know.
I am.
But in honor of the last episode, I wanted to update everybody that the Nuggets have made the playoffs.
Excellent. Congrats on that.
Congrats to Mama Valerio.
Yeah. I had a brush with sports this week. I was in Los Angeles for a pre-conference session for AERA, the American Educational Research Association, and the Nashville Predators.
My home association for my scholarship, yes.
Well, just wait. Hold on. The Nashville Predators, which is a hockey team, stayed in my hotel because they were playing the LA Kings, and we were staying at LA Live, which is, as you know, the cultural center of downtown Los Angeles. But here's the thing you missed by not going to AERA this year.
I missed a lot.
Sure. Chuck D spoke to the conference yesterday.
What?
And I meant to text you yesterday and tell you that. But yes, Chuck D was a featured presenter? Yeah, I don't know, speaker on the main stage at AERA. He's got some film coming out that you should look into.
I love that on so many levels. The 90s high schooler in me and college student could not be more excited about that.
I'm going to show my ignorance here, so we may have to cut this out. Chuck D was Public Enemy, right? No.
We'll just keep going.
No, tell me.
I want to share my congratulations to both the men's and women's basketball champions. It was absolutely fantastic to watch them, and I greatly enjoyed the dominance that we saw from some returning and some new teams. And there have been some new data points that have come out about how Americans are supporting women's sports in the ways that they are, but how we still have some work to do on the equity of distribution of profits and also of opportunities.
Yes. And also I was right. Chuck D is an American rapper, best known as the leader and frontman of the hip-hop group Public Enemy, which he founded in 1985. Wow.
Yes.
With Flavor Flav.
All of this is correct. My big sigh is because how is that a question?
Because I grew up a very sheltered child.
So now if I were to say, yeah, boy, in honor of Flav, who also, tying it all together, because that's what I do, is such a strong supporter of women's sports and has been not just sponsoring them himself, but also bringing awareness and doing fundraising campaigns for a variety of women's sports. And he, on socials, was really hyping up the Women's March Madness tourney. So thank you, Flav.
Yes. Thanks, Flav.
Yeah.
It's the flavor of love.
Right.
Is what that is right there. Anyway.
What time is it, Erin?
I don't know, because I don't have a giant clock. I get the reference. I think it's time for us to actually talk about the stuff we're here to talk about, because we're losing listeners by the second, I imagine.
No, we still have a number of them who are like, she what? She what? I'm kidding. Okay. So let's talk. You were at ERA, and then you also, since our last recording, you were at?
So I was at AGB, National Conference on Trusteeship, I only go to the best places, the Gaylord in Denver.
Hi, my backyard. Sort of.
Yes, just an odd place. But anyway, I was at AGB, which was great. And the thing I loved about it is they had such strong main stage presenters. That makes it sound silly, but
like Chuck D.
They did not have Chuck D, but I will make that suggestion to the
Yes.
to the
Or
team
it
at
has to be the
AGB.
flavor.
Or Flavor Flav. Okay. Anyway, I was at AGB and I got to see Brian Alexander, who is a faculty member at Georgetown, who is a higher education futurist. He's everywhere. He's on socials, as you call it.
Yes.
He's got a weekly webcast that I have dropped in on a couple of times, but this was the first time I got to see him do sort of his TED talk on what's coming for higher ed. And it was fantastic.
Oh,
It
great.
was, my gosh, I was so impressed. It was at the right level of detail and specificity for this audience, which was primarily trustees and a smattering of presidents. It wasn't doom or gloom. It wasn't Pollyanna. It just was what it was and touched on a range of issues, including AI, including lack of trust in higher education, including the climate crisis. Just a really wonderful presentation. So for folks who are looking for somebody to come talk to your boards, come talk to your alumni groups, come talk to your leadership teams, you should definitely be looking at Brian's website to get some information about what he might be able to bring to your event or organization.
And also think of us. But
Well,
keep going.
Think of us first, and then when our rider is too specific and too expensive, then you can think about other people. The second person, somebody who I was super excited to see present, was a guy named Robert Herr. He is a regent for the University System of Maryland. But in addition to that, he is the attorney of record for Harvard University in a number of their cases against the Trump administration.
So he is like Ben-Hur.
Just exactly like. And of course, could not talk about anything that isn't already in the public domain about these lawsuits against the administration or lawsuits against Harvard, but just a really fascinating person to listen to when it comes to thinking about governance, when it comes to thinking about how to best protect higher education from overreach, whether that be on the state level, the federal level, thinking about the roles and responsibilities of trustees to figure out how to protect their institution. Just a really phenomenal, again, not hyperbolic, typical attorney, very measured, very thoughtful, but not inscrutable. So that was excellent. And then the third session, which was not a plenary, but was a concurrent that I really enjoyed, was led by, I think I can now say, my friend and definitely my neighbor, Karen Weaver, who is an expert on intercollegiate athletics, and she's a faculty member at the University of Pennsylvania. And I took a page out of the Teresa Parrot playbook because she and I have followed each other on socials for ages. And I sent her a message while I was in the session before hers and said, I know you online. You know me online. We live across a river from one another. And I'm just going to pop in and say hi before your session, which I'm really excited about. And I did. And she's just delightful. And she
so smart, so delightful.
So smart. And she gave this sort of whip around view of all of these issues in college athletics. She started, obviously with NIL. But what was interesting was she said, I was torn between saying that the biggest issue in college athletics right now is NIL and between saying that the biggest issue is online sports betting.
Yes. That seems to be the conflict right now, is which is the bigger both threat, but then in some ways reality, right?
Yes.
How do you balance the two of those? But those are the two that I'm seeing raised most often these days in athletics, is that double-headed monster that we have that is our reality.
Yeah. And there's some truly frightening research out there about how much your students, whether they are athletes or not, are spending both in terms of time, but really in terms of money on these apps. Interestingly, D3 athletes are more likely to engage, or D3 students are more likely to engage in sports betting than D1. And there are just horror stories of students having to drop out of school because they have spent all of their money, both whatever money they have, but also financial aid dollars.
Correct. Financial aid dollars.
Yeah. And leaving with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gambling debt in their early 20s, late teens, early 20s. So it was really, it was disheartening, but wonderful to hear about all of the sort of pressing issues. But my favorite part of the HB meeting was that I walked out of there with a stack of books in my shopping cart.
Great.
Number one, and these are all books that were referenced at the meeting. So Brian Alexander has a new book coming out, or I guess it's out at this point, called Peak Higher Ed, How to Survive the Looming Academic Crisis.
Nice.
Also referenced in one of the sessions was Brian Rosenberg, the former president of McAllister, his book, Whatever It Is, I'm Against It, Resistance to Change in Higher Education. And then I also want to flag that Karen Weaver has a book coming out in August called Understanding College Athletics, What Campus Leaders Need to Know About College Athletics.
So I would add one more Karen Weaver book.
Okay.
She wrote it's a textbook, but it's excellent on the financing of athletics. And that book is really, really phenomenal. So that would be something I would recommend for people to also read, because when you look at that Understanding College Athletics overview, if you want to really dive in deeply, the finance part is where it really gets interesting these days.
Absolutely.
And that's a course that she teaches, and then also a book that she wrote. Here's my one thought on the list, just a caveat, I would say. I think Brian Rosenberg's book was good. So it came out about 2.5 years ago. And he also, for those who attend AMA and are senior leaders, he was a speaker at the Senior Leader Experience 1.5 years ago. The one caveat I have about the book, and I have said this to him personally, although he probably doesn't remember me, and that is, it's the premise, whatever it is, I'm against it. He talks about what it feels like to be a campus leader and where some of these ideas come from, but he never brings it back around from whatever it is, I'm against it. It's such a honest look, but I also think the solutions and the next steps and where we should and could go is missing. So maybe not, Brian, I would love book 2 because thank you for pointing out why we have resistance, where the change is really impacting dynamics, and now what are your suggestions for leaders?
That's such an important point, and you bring me back around because I was just at a pre-conference session at AERA, as I mentioned, for deans of colleges of education. And one of the things I was there to talk with them about messaging. How do we message the need for and the value of education research? And so one of the things, and I think I warned the person I was talking to that this was a soapbox that I was going to hike myself up on, is that higher education spends so much time talking to itself. We forget how to talk to normies, if you will. And somebody said, the way I always talk about it is we spend so much time describing the problem and we don't spend enough time figuring out the solution. And I think that is such a smart insight about how we just get caught in our own little bubble.
I'm going to add to that. We spend so much time talking about the problem and how it impacts us. We don't talk about the why and the solution. So the why and the how are just glossed over, and instead it's purely the what.
Yes.
And the deeper critical thinking comes with the other questions and the solutions from there.
Yeah.
Inflection. That's what we need, inflection.
Yes. And I'm hoping that one of these books solves one problem. I also want to just flag, while we're talking books, that Lee Bollinger, the former president emeritus of Columbia, is releasing a book. It just came out called University: A Reckoning.
I have an old book of his that I was part of a book club.
And then there's also, just because I was noodling around in what was new in the higher ed book world, The Great Upheaval: Higher Education's Past, Present, and Uncertain Future by Arthur Levine. And then this one sounds really interesting to me and makes me think about Kevin McClure's work, Leading Toward Liberation: How to Build Cultures of Thriving in Higher Education by Anne Marie Canio. I think Canio. I'm not sure if it's a short A or a long A. So those I was thinking about. And then also, Teresa, I came across, bringing it all the way back, a book called Higher Education that had a cover my grandmother would have described as a bodice ripper. It was some kind of romance something that I did
About
not.
higher ed?
Sure. I'm sure it had meaningful discussions of
Pedagogy.
pedagogy and the demographic cliff.
Yeah, it's not a cliff.
It's a slope. But yes, I did briefly think about ordering that and shipping it to your house, but
I would have read
myself.
That. So I was visiting Grinnell a couple of weeks ago to see Ann Harris, who we had on our last episode, so episode reference. And while I was there, I saw that she has the John Thielen books on her bookshelf. And she said I had described them as a romance novel because I love higher ed so much that it reminds you of all of our flaws and all of our excellence. And so she read the John Thielen books. And he has a new one that just came out that I need to order that is going to be a common read across the campus.
Oh,
so she said, one, his books are not romance novels to the industry. I disagree. But two, she thought they were so fantastic and history is so important for where we are and how we should think about the future that she is using his new co-authored book as a common read.
Well, there you go.
We'll put all of these books in the show notes.
Yes. And then once again, would somebody just send us a message and tell us that you want to have a book club with us?
Right. Let's have a book club.
Then I could get Teresa to pay for some of these books.
You would pay for them anyways, and you know that.
I do.
And especially, I love that you were leaning into higher ed scholarship books, which makes me think you should get your doctoral degree. And I'm sure Michael Harris would love that.
Sure. And if you can pay for that, I'll pay for the books myself.
Higher ed is changing fast. From declining enrollments, falling trust in public institutions, and the rise of artificial intelligence, higher education leaders have never faced greater challenges than they do now. Higher Voltage is a regular podcast hosted by industry veteran Kevin Tyler. In each episode, he talks to higher ed leaders and experts to get their take on what's working, what's not, and what has to change. Higher Voltage isn't just for anyone who works in higher education. It's for anyone who is interested in or cares about higher education. Listen to Higher Voltage anywhere you get your podcasts.
I just wanted to mention, this is like such a good organic plug kind of episode. I just wanted to mention that we had Sarah Custer on the podcast last season, a year into her tenure. And I just wanted to say that one of my favorite things that she has done as editor-in-chief of Inside Higher Ed is that she has started writing columns from the editor-in-chief. And they're so smart and they're so thoughtful. And I love...
She's brilliant. Yeah.
Yes. And this is long something that I wish Doug and Scott had done because somebody in that position sees so much, hears so much, talks to so many people. And I love having the opportunity to sort of look into Sarah's brain. I would have loved it with Doug and Scott to see how they're pulling all these things together and what kind of analysis they're doing of what they're seeing. And so just want to flag for folks that Sarah is writing this column. And this week's in particular, I think is really smart. It's talking about the president's budget, which drives me crazy every year when it's released because we waste a ton of ink on it. And it is
and by president, you mean of the United States.
Of the United States. It's a messaging document. It's nothing more. And I think we've already received all of the messages this president and his administration have for higher ed. But what Sarah looks at is the impact that funding MSIs has on not just minority students, but the importance of those funds for institutions that manage to launch students from lower income quartiles and quintiles further up the economic ladder. It's a really great piece. It's really smart and thoughtful. So I recommend that to folks. It was in this morning's Inside Higher Ed email today. We're recording on Thursday the 9th, so go back and find that. But also just make a habit of scrolling down past the quick takes and looking for Sarah's column when it appears.
I love that. And it aligns with work that we did many years ago, and I did for years and years with Lumina Foundation on MSIs. Yep. And it was tied very closely to this. So if you're also looking for an organization that works on these kind of issues, has research on them, has a number of different reports and other writings, please go to the Lumina Foundation. They have a fantastic magazine, Lumina Focus. They also have a daily newsletter where they consolidate articles that are tied to completion, and a number of those are focused on MSI success. And we often think of MSIs as a place where we give additional discretionary funds or bonus funds, if you will, to help students. And to your point, it doesn't just help minority students, it helps all students, because the work that's being done, and Lumina tracks this very carefully, is about student success writ large and environments that encourage graduation and facilitate that. So I'm super pleased to see that she's talking about this as well, because it's critically important.
Yep. Okay, now I'm officially done for the moment.
Excellent. So my pieces are not nearly as positive, but here we go.
What a change for us.
I know.
I'm the positive one, and you are perhaps somewhat less so.
I am gonna show Brian that I can bring it around to positive, right? If I'm gonna expect it from him. Here we go. And there are a number of different things that are kind of bubbling up right now. So there was an interesting piece and breaking news from higher ed. Beep, 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 beep. Breaking news in higher ed that the Wisconsin system ousted its president. So I'm going to link to an article from Josh Moody, also at Inside Higher Ed, where he talks about this. And the reason that I'm mentioning it, the Cron had a piece on it. I also saw a piece out of Wisconsin. I saw a piece that was in the Wall Street Journal. I think there were a whole bunch of pieces on this. Here's what I will say is the reason that I think people are so interested is that the legislature is saying that the board, not all of whom have been confirmed for their board seats, they fired him because he wasn't woke enough and was too closely aligned with right-leaning members of the legislature and other elected officials. So this feels like a pendulum swing in some ways, that if that's why he was let go, it is a counterbalance, if you will, and a new chapter for what we've seen elsewhere across the country with some presidents and chancellors and their departures. It's fascinating.
Wisconsin leading the way.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very, very interesting. And it is also interesting to see that this board, I mean, credit to them, I guess, they are toeing the line. Nobody is talking to the press. I haven't seen anything leak from the board. So somebody's following our advice somewhere.
Correct. And that's been one of the things that I'm very curious about is the president, the president, because I want to make sure it was a president, not a chancellor. He has been talking, but he has been saying, I have no idea. And I was blindsided, even though they had given a very public timeline to him that if you don't resign by X time, we will fire you. And they did not taco. Instead, they went forward and did exactly what they said they were going to do. So it was a fascinating just a case study for all of us to watch, and I'll be curious to see what comes. He is a lawyer, and he says he does not plan to sue, at least at this point, as of you said, August 9th state. April 9th. Woo, look at me.
Man.
I just passed by summer. But I will be curious to see if that changes and what that means. But it's fascinating to see that he has continued to engage very cryptically and randomly, I'll say, in media associated with his departure.
And they've appointed somebody as executive in charge.
And it's somebody from Marcom. So for all of you Marcom people who have presidential aspirations, and I know there are many of you who do and many of you who should, here you go.
Yeah, maybe not the way we want to get there, but hey.
But it chooses you.
It will be interesting to see what the board elects to do regarding a search process, if there is one, what the timeline is, and who they ultimately select.
And I would say also, let's watch and see how the legislature reacts to this. Because if they feel like one of their own or an ally has been dismissed in a way that they would not prefer, I will be very curious to see if there's retaliation against the Wisconsin system. Okay, so that's number one. The second is I wanted to dive a little bit into international education. I know that doesn't apply to all institutions, perhaps, but I think there is the case to be made that it might start to apply to more institutions. And let me tell you why. Johns Hopkins Carey School of Business is now offering Maryland grads half off.
Isn't that a thing?
Yes. So, and they're saying it's in part because they had so many international education spots that they traditionally filled that they still need to fill those seats. And what I can say in our work, I am hearing more and more from our clients who are not foreign student dependent and aren't Johns Hopkins name brands, that there is now this cascading impact for them based on Johns Hopkins offering this. So it's one of two things. They're pulling students from other institutions, and second is now students that are in their states are saying, we want the Johns Hopkins treatment. So this is a very fascinating turn, I think, not just to talk about international education as a whole, but secondly, to point out that even if you haven't had reliance on foreign student tuition dollars, there is a reality here that it still could impact you significantly this fall.
Yeah. One little footnote there on the business school side of it. We saw, a couple of years ago, the beginnings and maybe the middle of the deflation of the MBA bubble. A lot of institutions that implemented these programs because they thought they would be silver bullets on the budget side were starting to pull back from MBAs because they are expensive and because we flooded the market. There were way too many. So based on Carrie's reputation, I have no doubt that international enrollment is in the mix and probably playing a very large part in the mix. But I also wonder if there is somebody somewhere saying, well, our pool was getting a little softer or interest was getting a little softer. And this is also a convenient time to point at international and pull back. Again, no doubt that international is playing a big role for Hopkins, but I would be interested if they're not finally seeing a little impact of the bursting of the MBA bubble.
And I would also add that they've had campus expansion as well. So I think this also is an inflection point for the industry as they see the Vandys and the Johns Hopkins of the world adding locations. What does that look like in the current environment? When these projects were financed, when they were proposed to boards, we were in a much different spot in higher education. And so with where we are now, I think there are many factors that I think are worthwhile for all of us to follow as well.
Yeah, I mean, Hopkins spent a ton of money upgrading their DC facilities.
Which is beautiful.
Yes, but I still miss the newseum.
Oh, I miss the newseum so much. I was just talking about the other day to my husband because we went together and made me sad.
Yes.
But it's not there anymore. But the other thing that I would say is some of the online conversation that I'm seeing isn't about Johns Hopkins, but still is about international education. And that was some comments that Vice President J.D. Vance made about international students that kind of makes the assumption that there are limited number of spots, and these limited number of spots are being have been taken by foreign students traditionally, and that excludes opportunity for Americans. And the conversation that I've been seeing online is about how that's not exactly how it works from an enrollment standpoint. It's about qualifications. And second, the reality for a lot of programs that do accept international students about how the financing works, still tying back to Johns Hopkins, how that international tuition rate offsets the cost for many in the United States. So as we think about this, it's how the international students enrich the experience and the opportunities and the learnings for our students. There aren't a fixed number of seats, and also the finances associated with their enrollment are critically important to those institutions. And I point back to something from June in 2025, and this was a piece that was in Politico about foreign student crackdown just beginning. And I would love for everybody to go back and look at that because it really was a fantastic foreshadowing for where we find ourselves now and the conversations that are continuing, but after a year of the Trump administration and how that is further impacting enrollments for the fall. So there we go.
I'm holding in a very big sigh.
Yes.
Because I'm gonna retain my seat as the optimistic person here.
Yes, for today's episode. Next, I'm going to add a piece from Eric Kelderman at The Chronicle that I thought was really fascinating. And there are other pieces again about this. And that is the Education Department's proposed overhaul of accreditation is here.
Yes.
If y'all will remember, about a year and a half ago, we had Belle Whelan on, and I would love for everybody to go back and listen to that episode and then think about where we are now. It was a fantastic foreshadowing, both of the conversations and the reality around this and what accreditors would do. And I think that one of the interesting components of this is the reality that I think all of these conversations about compacts with institutions didn't go very far, didn't bring in the institutions that the Department of Education hoped. And I think that these accreditation changes that have been outlined by the Department of Education and are being reported by many outlets are the new compact. And I think this is a really critical time for us to go back and listen to what the purpose of accreditation has been, why accreditation is so important for students and for families as they make choices, and now how it's being proposed as a very, very different, I would say, hammer rather than a tool.
Yeah, I agree. I think accreditation is always one of those stories that only the wonkiest of the wonks track very closely. And I think it is time that we all sort of tune into this conversation, because what we have seen with negotiated rulemaking and the Trump Department of Education is that they have put together committees for these negotiated rulemaking sessions that are heavily stacked to make sure that the consensus is reached, the consensus that the administration wants, and they reach it very, very quickly. So there's going to be a session, I think it's next week, and then another meeting in May, maybe 2 meetings in May. But these things are going to be wrapped up quickly. They are going to be
by design. This is the goal.
Yes. And there are opportunities for folks to institutions and individuals to comment on these negotiated rulemaking, the outcome of these sessions. If you go to the ACE website, there are some tools there for you to reach out and file comments with the Department of Education. And there's some good insight there about what actually gets traction and how to, I don't want to say game the system, but copying and pasting the same comment over and over and over again just is recorded as one comment or one issue by the department. So we need to be very specific, we need to talk very frankly about how this proposed change could impact your institution. So there's just some guidance there at the ACE website that I would recommend folks look at, and we'll throw that link in the show notes as well. But this is one we need to track very closely, because this is fundamental to how we do business.
Or don't do business.
Yeah.
And I would also encourage that this would be a fantastic time for many who always say, how can I help my institution in these moments? Read what the proposal is for the accreditation changes. And every single person on every single campus can say, this is how it will change, for better or for worse, what I do and how I do it. And let your administration knows. Because a lot of institutions are coming up with their responses. And again, to your point, the more specific that we can be, the more that institutions and leaders are willing to go on the record for what this could mean for the industry is critically important. And as we continue to talk about higher education, I'm seeing more and more that what is seeming to move the needle is the economic impact for communities and for associated industries, if you will, of what some of these changes mean. So as we all know, if you make a major policy shift, it's going to have consequences. And the financial impact on many of our towns, communities, and industries could be significant. So make sure you're following all of this information and then arming your leaders with what they need to be effective. I don't know if y'all heard that, but my dog just gave the biggest sigh when I was in the middle of that little diatribe.
We should get a microphone for the dog.
He would love that. Yes. The last piece I would have, and this is I was going to say a positive. I don't think it's it just is. I was going to make something out of positivity out of what just is a thing.
Go.
There have been a number of conversations lately about where are all of the protesters, whether it's about the war with Iran or it's about the Trump administration and some of its policies. Where are all of the protesters on campus? And why are we not seeing the protests now? And does silence mean that students are okay with where we are? And I just thought it was such a laughable query. because we have seen and we have talked about many times on this podcast that this administration isn't interested in feedback, and the purpose of protesting is to provide feedback
and make change.
Make and ask for change, make change, and talk about what we want versus what we see and we're receiving. So I just want for all of us to be very careful as we're seeing some of these comments about where are the protesters. And I feel in some circles they're trying to encourage protesting right now as we end the semester, that instead this is a moment, I think, for us to go back to our students and just check in on them, because they aren't protesting for a reason. They aren't taking advantage of their First Amendment rights. And so if that is the case, and because we know it's not just a shift in how students feel, it really is a shift perhaps in what they fear, that this is a perfect opportunity for our colleagues to go back and to check in on our students. Because for me, this isn't a red flag that they're not protesting because, they're not interested or they're weak. It is a red flag for me that there is something deeper that perhaps we need to be looking into, providing services on, and making sure that we're on the same page with them, because we need to make sure that the kids are all right.
Yeah.
And the adults.
Yep. And I had some clear indications this week that we are sliding into that season where the stress is mounting and all the resources in the world could be laid in front of you. And sometimes it's just really hard to reach out to those resources, even if they are all available. And I know our institutions are dealing with a lot as we head into finals and commencement, reunion, and our students are struggling in a lot of ways. And in addition to checking on your students, check on your frontline staff who are still in a lot of ways coming out of COVID and everything else. So sending good thoughts and fully caffeinated coffee to everybody out there doing the hard work.
Okay, so now I'm going to end on a positive. This really is. I've been threatening a positive for a while, and here we go.
I'm just going to say this is like 3 more topics than you put in the show rundown, so you will be docked.
True.
Sure it is.
No, this is the second one that wasn't in the show rundown.
Okay.
Because that one was one that was on my mind today, not yesterday.
Go.
So I want to congratulate all of the people who have recently earned their doctoral degrees or are going through the dissertation defense process right now. March and April are the months for these sorts of efforts. And I just got a delightful email from Jorge Bermicki, and you all may remember he's been on the podcast. He's at Howard, and he's an amazing professor of education. And he was saying he had meant to send me a note because I had meant to send him a note. I was delayed, and then he took a bit to get back to me. Not very much. Jorge, you're great. But he was saying it's because it's dissertation season, and he was just finishing work with his students who are now doctors. And that just made my heart so happy. And the way that he talked about it, as we heard when he was talking about leadership traits in higher ed, was such pride and joy that I wanted to give a shout out to Jorge. He was not late in his communications. That's on me. Seeing that kind of joy and remembering why we're doing all of this is so important. And I want to give a special shout out to one of my besties in the entire world, Dr. Binti Harvey, who just finished defending her dissertation last month, and she is a full-fledged doctor.
Congratulations.
Yes. So all of that is just a reminder that graduation is on the horizon. And that's always my favorite season because everybody for at least a day is happy, mostly. And we're in the season that leads up to that with so many people reaching amazing milestones. And that always makes my heart happy.
Well, there you go. You did it.
There you go.
You did it.
And the Nuggets are in the playoffs.
What more could a girl need?
I think that's it.
Yeah, maybe lunch. Lunch would be good.
And as you mentioned, coffee. Always will take the coffee.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, we are going to be back with another episode in a couple weeks. And then, believe it or not, one more after that to close the season out.
Yes. Can I give one more set of tidbits? This is not on there. I need to, Erin. It'll be too late next time.
Go ahead quickly.
If you were going to propose a session for the American Marketing Association, do it. That is coming to a close in what will be a week after this episode drops. Also, I will be at a number of conferences this summer. You will be at a number of conferences. Check our website because those are listed. We would love to see people, whether you're coming to Denver for the Case Marketing and Branding Conference or you're going to be in DC for AALI, whatever it is, drop us a note. We are going to be across the country this summer. Erin had round 1 of travel. And then we both are going to hit round 2. And then I think I close with round 3. So look for us. We would love to say hello and we'll buy you a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe a book if Erin's lucky.
I'll buy you a glass of wine.
And on that note, thank you.
Are we finally done?
And wait.
No.
Save it for next.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode. You can find links in the show notes to the topics and articles referenced, as well as a copy of the show's transcript on the Volt website, voltedu.com. Remember that you can always contact us with feedback, questions, or guest suggestions at trustedvoices@tvpcommunications.com. Follow Trusted Voices wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check out Higher Voltage and Campus Docket, the other podcasts on the Volt Network. Until next time, thanks to Erin Hennessy, DJ Housechild, and the Volt team, including Erin and Marina, for a great episode. And thank you for listening.